First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer. How are you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, what happens if your best friend gets promoted? Or maybe a family member, maybe a wife, maybe a husband, maybe your child. It is what it is. But the question was sent our way. How do you maintain that professional relationship? I think it's going to be a very interesting dialogue. And I'm going to bring Connie Alleyne, the author of The Cage vs. Cocoon. What's up, Connie? How you doing? How's the book?
I'm good. The book is doing good. The book it's doing its thing. I just got an order for 300 copies, so I'm just letting it roll out. It's like a whole different side of life, but I'm loving it. The book is doing good. The Civilian Corrections Academy, people are taking the courses, which is great. I'm sorry, I am on Do Not Disturb. I don't know how that happened. It's good times for everyone. So I'm excited though about all of our stuff coming up. I'm excited about our virtual series, which is something new. We had a conversation and then we made it happen. So it's all good. It's all goodness.
Yeah, I got some details to that inside the commercial break. But I'm looking forward to it too. I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of people through virtual. Hopefully the agencies do pick up on this idea because we have a good panel. Myself, you, we have Russ Hamilton, Gary York, retired Major Louis Soto. So we have a lot that we can cover. And then we'll also have, we're still in the process of finalizing the event in Nebraska. And then we also have the virtual for the International Association of Correction Training Professionals. That's actually in Arizona, but we're doing it locally through virtual. So we have a couple of things going on. My book, also Inmate Manipulation, is doing very well, selling its copies, making its mark on the world. So good things. Thank you to, obviously, the community here. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to have any of these things if it wasn't for the supportive community. So thank you. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We are going to go to our sponsor when we come back. We're going to talk about, specifically the message that was sent to me was my best friend got promoted. So basically, we're going to be discussing what happens when someone you're close to, one of your homies, they get promoted, and how do we maintain that professional relationship? Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, and we are back. So I have actually worked with people that I've developed a relationship with at the job, and I have seen them get promoted. I myself have been that person who got promoted. So I will say this along the way, because I think we're going to develop friendships when we get into the job. I get that. There are going to be people that we're going to wind up hanging out with outside of work, because again, we spend a good portion of our day at work. So we are going to have that connection with the people. I think one thing that helped me along the way is that people know what to expect from me. So it doesn't really change when I got moved up. I haven't really changed who I was, in regards to, the position I'm in now. So I think that when I entered this profession, I only connected with like-minded people. So the people that I have actually had a longer relationship with, they've accepted me in this position, and they don't put me in any circumstances or situations where, I have to treat them unfavorably, if you will. I'm trying to be as gentle with my wording as possible, but, and if I did, they also know me enough to know that I'm not coming after them because I want to come after them. I'm coming after them because it's expected within my job description. So again, I think the way you kind of walk into this profession, who you are, will eventually dictate the supervisor you become. So I think the people that you connect with will have that level of expectation as long as you're connected to the right people. I mean, would you agree with that, Connie? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think that when we can all be mature and we can be professional, that you can take that posture. But I think the question was posed because there were probably some feelings about that best friend or friend being promoted. Now, it could be maybe the friend has taken on a new persona in this new space, but that could be the requirement of the role that the friend is stepping into. Or it could just be that it's hard to see your friend as not just your friend anymore, but possibly someone that you're reporting up to, right? And I think the challenge is not only dynamic of the friendship, but usually we also know all the good and bad things that you've done, right? We also know the shortcuts. So there could be something in the back of the mind saying, you know, this person doesn't deserve this role. I don't know how they got there, whether they're in a space of judgment because of something negative they know the person may have done in their previous role, or they're in a place of jealousy because it's something that they wanted to do or something that they wish they could do, but they don't know how, they didn't know how to get there. I mean, who knows, right? Like, but I will say that, you know, shifting from being the friend to being the boss is very hard. Because you do have a personal relationship, you would like to make sure that that person is never going to put you in a compromising position, to ever have to defend them or some action that they took. But I think it's learning that as the friend has stepped into this management space, that they're learning new skills, right? They're learning how to be a leader. They're learning how to be effective at their job. They're learning all these other intangible skills, all these soft skills, you know, that maybe they didn't have, or they're figuring out how to incorporate those soft skills into this environment that they didn't have to do that before, right? They didn't have to be particular about their words before, right? Like when I was on the line, I could talk to you any way I wanted to. Now that I'm stepping into this management role, the way I engage with you has to be different because the liability is different, the accountability is different. So there could be a couple of things that's going on in the midst of this, but I think it's just a matter of being understanding and being secure in your friendship.
you said a lot of good things there. One is the jealousy part. I want to attack that real quick because this shouldn't be seen as a competitive environment. We really do need to support and nurture those that move up and not be jealous because we ourselves didn't get the position. Because to me, that's where the initial separation occurs. If I'm not truly supportive and I remain jealous and it's competition, then when you move up, I really give you no reason to stay connected to me. The other thing is, I love what you said, you know, yeah, you're right. One moved up and one was left behind. And I think there has to be that discussion of, hey, by the way, at work, this is who we are. This is who we have to be. And that goes for any relationship, you know, husband and wife, whatever it is, because the one thing you want now, by the way, husband and wife, whatever it is, obviously you're probably not going to be allowed to supervise that individual anyway. Friendships are tough because technically you could be friends with almost anybody on your shift. Again, because the friendship could have pursued here on the job. But the husband and wife thing, you know, that's probably not going to be allowed. Most likely that supervisor is going to have to defer that responsibility over to another supervisor. Now, a lot of times you don't have that option. A lot of times there may not be enough supervisors on the shift. And I mean, sometimes they could actually switch shifts. But sometimes the switching shifts, it may not always be optimal. What they may tend to do is they may expect some level of professionalism, and you're going to want the staff to see that you're treating that person just like everyone else, which again, it's still a tough perspective because a lot of people are going to say, well, you know what? I know you guys are buddies and this person is getting a more favorable position. So what I would tend to do is if I had that relationship with somebody, but again, it's a very specific relationship. If I felt that could deal with me being professional with them, which it shouldn't, but if I felt that it could, then the first thing I would probably do is ask if I could have that person directly under another supervisor, you know. But technically, if this is just a friendship thing, I would go to the person who I'm supervising and saying, hey, listen, this is what's going to be expected from me. And this is what I would expect from you, you know. So I'm hoping that the person that is my subordinate, who was my friend, does accept the fact that I've grown up into another position. But that's why it goes back to me saying how important it is how you carry yourself the moment you enter this profession. Because you said another thing. Well, you could have done some stuff. And, you know, then this friend of yours is like, well, it's messed up that you're in this position because you've done these things. And I don't know if that's really a friend anymore. But having said that, that's why it's very key that, you know, you carry yourself in this professional manner, because even when you have that dialogue with that friend that kind of sets the rules, that friend should expect that dialogue, because maybe that's why you are friends. Maybe when I come into this profession, I connect myself with like-minded individuals who, you know, support the growth. And then if there is a concern, they're adults about it. Hey, I know it's not you, Gange. I know I dropped the ball, and I know you now have to play the supervisor. I get all that. But in the end, there's definitely going to have to be a dialogue that this is what I'm expecting in this professional environment. And if by any chance you try to use the friend card as I'm a supervisor, that's a good chance where we're going to have to end the friendship, because that's going to put me at risk in my position. Because again, at any point where it's proven that I'm treating somebody unfairly, you know, that's going to be my ass, you know, especially if it comes down to a lawsuit or whatever it is. But I will say, if your relationship is husband and wife, or if you yourself as a supervisor for some reason, which hopefully this is not the case, feel that you do have like a bias towards this individual, then you need to do the right thing and not directly supervise that individual. That can happen with, let's say, a family member, you know, a wife or your brother or sister or whatever it is. If there's a connection there that, you know, is really powerful, that stops you from being objective when dealing with that individual, then there should be a resource where you can defer that individual directly to another supervisor, or maybe even another level up if there is more than one supervisor on that shift. But most come to worst comes to worst, I've seen agencies say, well, you know what? You guys can't work on the same shift because of that conflict, or what could be perceived as a conflict. But what's your thoughts on that? You would expect a level of professionalism from the supervisor, but also the subordinate, knowing that this
Absolutely. I mean, because then honestly, when you think about the friendship itself, right? The expectation is that my true friend is going to be happy for me. They're going to be supportive of me, and they're not going to ever put me in a position where I have to choose between the friendship and my livelihood, right? And if in fact they do put me in such a position, then that's not my friend. And that's something that I will have to come to terms with. And ultimately, I would have to make that distinction or sever that relationship. And in I think what's the way, in like a healthy way, you know, not like you guys have an all out fallout, but really like almost like a heart to heart moment. Like, listen, you know, whatever that conversation is going, I'm never going to put together a dialogue about how that conversation is going to go. But, you know, I think it's really important that there's transparency, right? Because this job is important to me. Being successful in this new role is important to me. And anything that's going to jeopardize that is something I'm going to have to consider removing. And so if it happens to be the friendship, then I will have to remove myself from that friendship. And, you know, I think about husband, wife, because I've had that experience. And yeah, you could work on separate shifts, but there are times where, because staffing is limited, that, you know, husband is supervising wife or vice versa. And they can be very interesting situations when that happens, especially particularly if something goes wrong during that time. Because, you know, I'm almost certain that we're not supposed to have relationships with anyone who we have some level of authority over.
Well, it depends. I mean, again, you give up that level of authority if you do have that real personal relationship. So if I'm, one thing is, let's say I started dating on the job, might as well say it, and I'm a supervisor. I would let the person know. I mean, again, it's for the right reasons. Hey, if we're going to do this, know for a fact that I can't directly supervise you anymore. And you should document to the agency that you guys are official. I mean, a friendship is tough because you can make friends, it's the more intimate relationships, which I do believe that the person that sent me this message, there maybe is a very close bond, but I don't know if it's enough to say they have to report it. It's just more of you guys have to be professional. You can have business partners too. Me and you could be working together. I'm a supervisor, but we have a business together. Well, because of that, there's a greater concern. Yes, I would recommend that I don't supervise you directly. But also it keeps that relationship honest, especially if we're, if there is, let's say, a relationship between me and someone developing, and I say, hey, listen, by the way, this relationship can't involve me as a supervisor, knowing that if we're going to make this official, we're going to have to report it, and I'm going to have to see how you can now work for somebody else directly. So if I'm your sergeant, maybe you could work for another sergeant, or if you could work for the lieutenant.
So let me ask you, have you had the experience of maybe like a relationship on the job, not you per se, but there being a relationship on the job, and then one leader sees how his spouse is being supervised and intervenes?
Well, here's the funny thing. First off, I did have that experience. I had a business partner when I used to do my other business for the systems information analysis that we had. So we did the right thing. We reported it, but we were actually on the same shift. But I actually had another level up. At the time, I was a sergeant. So I was able to defer him to the lieutenant. So if there was any concerns that could lead to a write-up or discipline, I couldn't get involved in it. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't give out orders that day. Of course I could. But if it came to disciplining whatever it is, I would pass it up. Now, if people started questioning that my orders were unfair because I'm not giving him any work and I'm giving everybody else work, well, then again, I'm going to forward it back up and get someone objective to help that. Now, yes, I've had that happen. I've seen where, there was an officer that was dating a supervisor, a lieutenant,
Wow.
Sergeant went to discipline her, lieutenant got involved in that. And that's an ethic concern. The lieutenant cannot get involved in that because he's using his authority to protect the individual who should have been written up. So that's a quick ethic concern. So technically, all the sergeant had to do was write that up and say there's a violation here because I can't effectively supervise this individual. And technically, the investigation would first note, did the lieutenant and this officer admit that they have a relationship? Was this written anywhere? And if not, that's going to be a concern they're going to have to address because they're going to go after them for not reporting it, and for the lieutenant for not still directly supervising that individual, but the ethic concern is now getting involved with a possible discipline, which could lead to bias. Because obviously now this person is being treated more favorably, and you're also stopping the supervisor from doing their job. So yeah, I think in this scenario here, though, this scenario is more of you have two friends and the behavior is more expected on you. Now, if the relationship is that close where you feel that you yourself cannot be objective in dealing with that individual, then you as a supervisor have to step up. But I will add something else too. How you're perceived by everybody matters too. So if you guys are, in that area and you're kind of just, only kind of having like this little click just between you and them and kind of joking around, whatever, just doing stuff that really is like you're outside of work, buddying up, as opposed to keeping that professional relationship. And then when that supervisor goes around, he's not that way with everybody else. That could be a concern because again, now people understand that there's a relationship there, and all it takes is for them to perceive that something, and for them to perceive that something is unfair. And then you wind up getting put in a position where you have to justify it. So I think the concern here is that, once that person steps into that supervisory position, the relationship that you have cannot exist in that wall in regards to that buddy, the husband and wife. That's for home. And if you feel at any point that you can't do that, then you literally have to alleviate that responsibility as being a supervisor. Now, some points it's mandated. if you're dating, because we know that that relationship is close, you have to report that. If you become married, you have to report that. You know, business, you have to report that, because even as a business partner, you know, there's money involved.
Mm-hmm.
So any type of relationship that can be proven that's more than what it's supposed to be, you got to report it. The friendship things that develop, again, you just have to be professional, you know, and say, hey, listen, this is what my role is. This is what your role is. And let's make sure when we're at the job that people only see us as being professional, because you can even, that's why, you know, what's funny? That's why a lot of supervisors don't go out with the employees after work. One thing is because the highest level of supervisory is always going to be responsible for what happens, even if not directly involved. We know that. Like if I go to a party and everybody's getting wasted, well, the superintendent was there, and even though I wasn't even in the room. But you take on that responsibility as being the highest person in the room. But the second thing is that, you know, there could be certain things at that party that could compromise you. And now when you become a supervisor and you're in those, you know, or you're a supervisor already, and you go back, hey, you want to write me up? Remember this the other night? Remember what happened this time? I mean, you never know. But the other area of concern is, I'm not saying we shouldn't have that closeness. You know, we should be able to go out and have that party. But I want to know something. When the front line invites you out and you're a supervisor, when you party, they need to have that respect of your position, because as a supervisor, if stuff happens, you may be put in a position to report it, even if it's outside of work. And the reason why is because if people found out about that party through work channels, you know, so, you know, there's a party going out, and when are we finding out about it? Because it's work and you have everybody from work present. You as a supervisor may still be obligated to report if there's an incident that could be an EED matter, you know, or whatever it is. You can't pull yourself from that level of being a supervisor. So if you're invited to a party, the first thing I would say is, hey, guys, I want to go, but, you know, it may be a little tough for me because of my position. Or if I do go, are you going to respect the fact that I'm there? And what do I mean by that? Maybe not party as hard, you know, maybe not put me in a position where I have to compromise my position. And it's very hard, Connie, because when you move up, there are certain things that you have to separate yourself from. But having said that, I think setting that standard up and saying, hey, listen, I'm not saying I won't go to your parties, but are you going to acknowledge the fact that I'm there and not put me in any positions that compromise me? Because all it takes, Connie, is for one person to say you were there. And if they see that as an extension of the workplace, so if there was an invitation that went out through an email, or if there was, you know, the word of the parties being passed around, or everybody there is from the job, you know, if anything can connect to the workplace, you as a supervisor may have responsibility if you see something that must be reported. So it's complicated. But again, I expect both roles to be professional. If I'm a supervisor, accept my position 100%. And, you know, and we'll have that relationship. But if you can't accept my position on the job, then I like what you said, kind of, that we're not friends, because obviously the motive the whole time was to, you know, control that. The moment I become a supervisor, now you want to play, hey, if you were friends, you wouldn't do that. Connie, if someone did that to me, like if I had to write up somebody and they made me feel guilty by doing it for, you know, because they were my friend, it would suck to have to do it. But that would encourage me, hey, you know what? We're not friends anymore. You know what you did was wrong. Don't use the friend card now. Don't do it. Because it's hard for me to already write it. And now you're going to add the other thing that now jeopardizes my job. So you put yourself in a situation, and now I'm the one that's ultimately going to get in trouble if I decide not to write you. So you know, again, if someone tries to use that card, Connie, that I would have an issue with that.
So I would play devil's advocate a second, right? So someone who was never in a management role may not understand the requirement of you stepping into a management role, right? And so I think we kind of impressed how important it would be to have that conversation with your friend, right? So that there is an understanding that in this role, here's some of the behaviors that are expected of me. But I think when you skip that part and you don't have that conversation, that's when your friend may not even know, like, they're doing something to compromise you. They may not even know what it would have taken. Maybe that's why they didn't get the job, right? Like, I don't know, right? But maybe they don't even know that if I invite you out to a party because you are the highest rank there, you are now responsible, right? Like that comes with experience, and that comes with like just learning the job. And so, I think sometimes, and because like, I feel bad, like, oh, like, it's my friend, right? Like, you ultimately don't want to lose a friendship because you got a promotion, right? And so there's got to be a way for us to meet each other halfway, to know, like, listen, you're going to always be my friend at work. Here's the way I have to conduct myself so that there is no semblance of anything inappropriate. There is no, favoritism, no misrepresentation, whatever you want to call it, right? And outside of work, we're as thick as thieves, right? Like, and that's not going to change to the core. But I think that there's a lot of growing and a lot of maturing that has to happen between both the person who takes on the new role, as well as the person who now has to adjust to seeing their friend in this elevated space.
Well, remember, right, I'm not saying we can't go to the party. I'm just asking that if we're invited, no, respect the position I'm in now. That's all it is.
Right. Yep.
Don't compromise me, because in the end, I'm telling you something, if something ever hits the paper, they usually go by the highest rank, especially in the admin side. I'm sure admin will love to go to a lot of parties, but if something happens, they'll be quick to say, yeah, this big thing happened, and the admin of, even though the admin wasn't directly involved in it, they were there. And especially if it's seen as an extension of the workplace. So how do people find out about this party? Why are they only people from work? So your supervisory responsibility may not lessen. And with the friendship, I love it. And the thing is, I'm not saying you can't talk at work either. I'm just saying that the perception, because trust and believe, there's always going to be that somebody that is going to, is probably will get in trouble and automatically say, well, that's because, I'm getting written up, but what about, this person who your buddy. The funny thing is, these are ways to protect yourself with your management. The friendship thing, again, a little bit harder because, again, you're going to develop friendships. But again, that's where you come in and always consistent with your practice as a supervisor. But if you have the chance to defer that responsibility, like, look like these two people are very close. I don't know if they're both having problems handling that professional relationship. So if it's the subordinate, grow up. Sorry, it is what it is. Grow up. Your buddy's now in a supervisory position. You have to accept that. Don't expect favors. But if it's a supervisor, I'm also going to say grow up, but I'm also going to say there's a resource for you. The resource is you may have to literally say, I can't supervise this person directly. Now, mind you, it's complicated writing anyone up, because that's where the concern is going to be. The concern is that person, when needed, going to be disciplined fairly, like everybody else would be. It's not easy writing anybody up. The hardest thing I know for one of my supervisors was writing up someone that they were buddies with when they worked the floor. But the moment you do it, it does set the boundary. But here's the funny thing, guys. If you carry yourself professional the whole way, the people that you connect with should be professional. So when you're in that supervisor role, they embrace that. And if they do something foolish, they shouldn't play the friend card. They shouldn't do that. And if they do, you got to cut it off. I know it may sound horrible, and it is what it is, but the thing is, it's hard enough for you to make the choice you have to do. But the sad thing is once that person uses that card, they're now getting you involved. They don't care about you because you have a job to do. That job may be to have to write that person. And I'm assuming because you're their friend, you didn't want to do it to begin with, but now you have to. So when you go to write the person and they utilize that card, probably because it's a last resort. And then when they make it harder for you to do that, well, guess what, guys? All they're doing is easing the road for them. But eventually the road's going to become harder for you because they're going to go back and question you. Why didn't you do your job as a supervisor? Well, you can't say, well, they were my friend and I didn't want to write them. It doesn't carry weight. They're going to say, well, you know what? You're not fit to be in this position because you obviously can't supervise everybody fairly. But so I know it's rough, but guys, just if you're going to cross into the supervisory role, I don't want people to take the negative out of this. I just want people to know there is a level of heightened responsibility. And it comes with that position that most people may not see, the partying after work and all these other things, but in the end, you have to do things that are perceived as being fair and objective. And I do expect the people that, have seen me go into this position, my friends, to embrace it and understand the role I'm in and how that role could shift. Connie, have anything you'd like to say in closing?
I just want to say, I acknowledge that it's hard. It is a hard transition to go from, we're all buddies and now I'm the supervisor, right? And, I think it's easy to say, oh, just act with integrity all the time and be professional and all those things. But the reality is that these are your people, right? Like these are your go-to people. These are the people that you've been going to lunch with for the last 10 years. And now you're promoted and all of a sudden there's no more lunch. Like all of a sudden, like, are you a different person? You aren't. But the reality is that when you stepped into that role, there are responsibilities and accountability that came with that role. And so you have a responsibility to separate the two while you're at work. And as tough as that might be, that is probably the best way for you to protect yourself and protect yourself from people who are going to say that you aren't treating everyone fairly, that you go have lunch with these people all the time. You don't have lunch with everybody else. You're a little more lenient with these people than you are with those people. Like every single thing you do gets questioned and gets scrutinized because there is that inkling of doubt that's kind of planted in there. So, I would just say to whoever it is, that's whether it's the supervised person or the friend, whoever it is, just know that integrity is essential, and protecting yourself and protecting your livelihood and really being successful in this role has to be important to you. And setting those personal and professional boundaries will be critical.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned, and I'll say to my closing remark, is that people have to see you as being objective, because if I have a problem, and let's say that involves your friend, I may decide not to go to you as a supervisor because your relationship with them is very close. Now, mind you guys, we still have to know our people. I'm not saying that. But there is a boundary, and that boundary is the process of, am I being objective? Am I being fair? Same thing, how the inmates perceive it. I'm not going to say I have a problem with this officer because I know the supervisor over this area is buddy with that officer. So I may not say anything. It could be played in many ways, but the key is this is one of the responsibilities of stepping into that leadership position. Yes. How do I know my people? How do I stay connected? But how do I let them know that there's a boundary here? That's the key. And the boundary is meant for them to respect. Even as that, it doesn't mean we can't be friends afterwards. After work is done, we can be friends. But at the job here, I still have to have that level of objectivity. And staff has to see me as being fair in regards to how I deal with the people I oversee, the people I supervise. Yeah, a very interesting dialogue. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of kickback here. But the truth is, guys, when you step into that role, that is a level of responsibility that should be accepted by both sides, the subordinate as well as the supervisor. And if the subordinate can't accept it, again, you got to grow up. And if the supervisor has a problem with it, again, you got to grow up. But there should be a measure where if the relationship is that close, then you need to write it up and defer it because it's stopping you from doing your job. And again, you would find that more for the relationships that are proven, like a marriage, a dating, or a business partnership. The friendship is more of, it's on the fence. But if that friendship is so close that's affecting your ability to do your job, then you better do the right thing and report it because everybody else is watching it. As always, guys, the show is here. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.